Hi, my name is Jim Smyth. I'm a tax attorney by background. I'm a business person who helps people in lots of different areas of life, typically people who are under a lot of stress from an entrepreneurial perspective. And about 2018, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Developed into stage 4 cancer. Turned out she had the BRCA gene. We probably spent $500,000 to $1 million per the insurance company on treatments for her, and it looked like we were going to lose her. She was about to lose the use of her left arm. She couldn't button. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't cut with a knife or a fork, or use a fork in her left hand. And we, at that point, had just, as you can imagine, a ton of doctors, oncologists, endocrinologists, and others that were giving us advice, radiologists, chemo docs. And then we also were in touch with an alternative medicine person who was trying to provide the best that he could from a positive, non-allopathic method as well. And I asked him the question, hey, if money wasn't an object and we were just going to solve this problem, where would you go in the world? And he said, I would go see Avi Herskowitz at Anatara Medicine in San Francisco. So 2 days later, with her about to lose the use of her left arm, and with me facing losing a bride and having a 28-year-old nonverbal autistic son at home, myself, our other 3 children were already out of the house. We went to San Francisco. In 4 months, she had no tumors that could be seen on a scan. And a year later, her immune markers were completely normal. Got my wife back, and we then found out she had some Lyme in the background, Lyme disease. So we found out she had some Barr-Epstein, higher titers of viruses. Went after that to take away chronic immune issues that had been undiagnosed. And life was great. We had a couple of other issues come up health-wise for a couple of our adult children, sent them to the clinic, and I went myself in July of 2019 and had some treatment, but I was too busy to continue on any kind of health regimen. I figured I'd just wait and get to that. December 2020, I got a really bad case of COVID. Mid-December, I was in bed for a week. December 20th, I went into the hospital with COVID. I was there for 11 days. I had to prone to stay off. If I didn't prone, lay on my stomach completely for 24 hours a day practically. I couldn't keep my oxygen levels above 90. And when I came out of the hospital New Year's Eve, about 11 o'clock at night, I got home. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't walk up any stairs. I was still on oxygen. I was on home bed rest. But in the meantime, I had reached out to Avi by text, and we were texting back and forth. The doctors were all telling me, I'm from Carmel, Indiana. The doctors were all telling me, all you have to do is exercise. But I couldn't exercise because it turned out the x-ray showed that my lungs were all scarred. So Avi said, hey, I think I can help. When you get out here as fast as you can, and we'll see what we can do. So end of January, I was in his office at Anatara Medicine again of 2021. And I had a condition of all kinds of what they call glassy particulate and scarring in my lungs. They were completely damaged. I couldn't walk off the plane. They had to wheel me off the plane. I took an oxygen condenser on the plane in case I needed it. And there were all kinds of issues around travel. I had to be wheeled between gates on the way to San Francisco, but which had never been the case before. I'd always been healthy and able to get around. Quite the humbling experience. Anyway, with a lot of therapies from apheresis to all kinds of magic that Avi otherwise does, including work with peptides, we were able to get rid of what was effectively idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, all that scarring, so that by July of 2020, my x-rays showed no scarring. So when I showed up in January, the first thing we did was a comprehensive MRI scan, showed all the scarring. 6 months later, the scarring was gone. And truly not something that's not supposed to happen. Pulmonary fibrosis, you're not supposed to be able to get rid of that. There's a case around that. One of the things that we did was apheresis. And there was a study done on that, and that documents all of the facts of my case. So one of the things that did was really showed me that my life effort was on unstable ground, and I really needed to change fundamentals of how I live. The result has been I've dropped 25 pounds. I sleep better. I eat better. I work better, and Avi's, in addition to saving people who are critical, who've tried everything else and are in terrible shape and are about to die, like my wife and then myself, his other specialty is extending life and focusing on longevity and the practices that can support that. The result is that I'm very much on that program now. I've sent a number of my high net worth clients in the business world to him. They've been extremely pleased. Some guys had heart attacks, and as a result of COVID, he's got them in completely great shape. Other kinds of conditions, and we took our nonverbal autistic son and have begun to see some improvement for John as well in that regard. One of the things that is a hallmark of the Anatara practice is testing. So when I flew out after contracting COVID, we went through very comprehensive full body scanning that identified major threats to my long-term health, which included all the scarring in the lungs is number one, but some issues in the spine, some issues from a prostate perspective, some issues from an esophageal perspective that are related to family and to living. Great to be aware of. In addition, all kinds of testing has been done on at least a quarterly basis to really understand where I am in terms of from a hormonal perspective, from a mold and toxicity perspective. It's interesting that I've got some loads of chronic either mold or yeast or bacterial infections, which have allowed us to identify chronic issues that would prevent reversing age and would make it harder for the immune system to fight cancer or other issues that tend to run in my family. Fortunately, I've never been diagnosed with cancer, but it's a risk factor for me. With regard to the testing, the protocols for testing include all kinds of tests that I've never received from any other practice. My wife's never received from any other practice. My son's never received, my children, but that have made a huge difference for us in terms of being able to identify problems before they happen and address them ahead of time. So we feel much safer as a result of the combination of the testing and the protocols. And when it comes to comprehensively addressing any particular condition, like my wife Denise's cancer or my pulmonary fibrosis, lung issues, it's been so useful to see the whole picture and not only be addressing the immediate symptoms, but also addressing core background issues that contributed to make it possible for those symptoms to maybe have more leverage in my life. So the testing protocols are unique, and Avi has a way and an understanding. He said it took him almost 50 years to understand the Krebs cycle, and how important that is to our longevity, our health, our energy levels, our well-being. And so many of the cellular factors, intra and intercellular levels that are tested, nobody else is paying much attention to in the allopathic world because they don't necessarily tie to symptoms, but they're as I've learned, in the background of what ends up being a serious attack from COVID or another condition. The things that I did notice when in going to Avi was I noticed just pains in my joints, and I noticed some creaking, and sometimes my hands would lock up a little bit, especially in the evening. When I was sleeping, when I wake up in the morning, I'd have locked up joints or muscles, and painful sometimes to unwind. And Avi got me on a regimen of peptides for immune modulation and some other practices that have significantly reduced the inflammatory messaging that was occurring in my body, and the result is that those pains have gone away, and that locking in my joints and in my hands has gone away. That is another. His expertise in this area is highly sought after by other doctors, and his connections, because he comes out of the academic world, from both being on staff at Hopkins and then UCSF, his really deep understanding on the academic side, and with expertise and certifications in pathology, cardiology, and immunology, are extremely helpful for a comprehensive attack on the aging process for anyone who wants to take that seriously. And one of the things I've learned is that it's not something that you just do and once a month. It's not something that strategically work. It's really difficult to stop and then reverse aging without a comprehensive approach. And the comprehensive approach is something that many really well-meaning people in the medical world don't necessarily understand in terms of the way that how therapies are administered, the order in which they're administered, and the time frame between them is extremely important to the results. And it's possible to overload the body. It's possible to create problems while being well-meaning. So, for example, my wife's tumor that was about to sever her arm, um, very possibly was accelerated by vitamin C therapy, causing swelling in the tumor, even though the vitamin C was intended for good results, wasn't necessarily the best thing to do at the time in that state. And so for me, when I was, for example, recovering from COVID, the issues of the therapies that were applied by IV and nebulizing and some other processes were carefully calculated in order to get me to a stable place and detox me some before doing some building with additional IVs. And it's really it's and to, for example, attack a situation when the body is in detox, to be able to try to attack and even rebuild a condition can be dangerous, when in fact it's a lot safer. I'm speaking as a layperson, not as an expert, but I've completely come to realize it can be a lot safer to take it one step at a time. Detox, get to balance, get to a stable place to be able to then fight the condition and build and improve those cells and organs that have been damaged. I think the result of that really showed up in my pulmonary fibrosis, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. If you look it up, IPF. Really showed up in the way that at first there was immune modulation to stabilize my system and get some of the junk out from being in bed for a month and a half, and then after that there was a building up and the use of the peptides and other strengthening procedures that improved my health. I live in Carmel, Indiana, which is a long way from San Francisco, and my clients are really all over the world. Mostly all over the United States, but they're every place from Southern California to Florida to New England. And I frequently refer people who've come into a very difficult situation to Avi. The first thing I would say is that he's always available. He always reaches out. He's got great support for being in touch. Usually within 8 hours, always within 24 hours in one way or another, and always empathetic, and one never needs to worry about the clock running, but it's also important not to abuse that privilege. In the process of coming to Avi, those who've come have never regretted it. I know we've never regretted it. And on a quarterly basis now, my family and I come into San Francisco in order to maintain our health. So we do have support in the local area that Avi works with us on, but the ability to interpret the information, the ability to determine, again, what steps things should happen in from a treatment perspective, the ability to see progress with regard to eliminating toxic influences that we've accumulated over the years. is I think immeasurable. It's got everything to do with the difference between knowing whether to eat the dessert first or whether to eat the main course. Many people are served the dessert first, which obviously then makes the main course less influential from a meal standpoint. It's the same thing with regard to many protocols that people would follow, but that Avi's just got systems down and testing down that gives you a superior advantage for addressing the problems. Why should you come to Anatara? Really, the question becomes, do you want to address the problem? Do you want to solve the problem? The reason to come to Anatara, regardless of where else you've been, is if you still are addressing the problem, if you don't have a clear path, if it's not taken care of yet, then that's the place that I know to go where the problem will be solved. It'll be solved honestly and directly, and it'll be solved in the proper steps, if it can be solved. There's never any guarantees in health, but between stage 4 cancer and pulmonary fibrosis and what I've seen with my clients and the help that's been given my children, I have to say that you go to Anatara if you want to solve an intractable problem and or if you want to live for a long time, you go for the very best protocols that exist in really honest conversation and a friendship. It's a private hospital, essentially, setting that you're coming into, where everyone is extremely well trained, where the care is extraordinary, and where there is not, you never have a sense of being rushed, and where there's deep work and testing to solve the problem. So you go to Anatara because you want the very best care, and you want to know that the human connection is there, not only with Avi, but also with his staff, which are a number of really long-standing relationships, all interwoven to provide the best support. I can't speak highly enough about the difference that this has made in my life, and it's really reshaped the way that I see the world and my relationships with clients. The long-term possibilities of each of our lives and the contribution that we can make is very much a function of our health. And when we think about being healthy until 70 or 80 or 90, that's great. But what if you could do it till 120? What if you could really reverse the process of aging and begin to see, as I've seen, everything from lower pulse to much higher oxygen levels in the blood to all kinds of other improved numbers related to health and aging. I can't recommend this practice enough, and I'm happy to speak with anyone who wants to talk about it. Thank you very much.